She told me I was the best she'd ever had, then sent a mass text to everyone she slept with about her engagement. When I first met Emma, it felt like one of those moments people describe in movies, the kind where time slows down and the noise around you fades. It was at a small get-together hosted by a mutual friend. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I'd been having one of those lazy Saturdays where the couch felt like quicksand. But my friend Mark had begged me to come out, claiming I needed to get a life. Ironically, I guess he was right, though not in the way either of us would have expected. Emma had this warm, disarming smile, the kind that made you feel like she was genuinely happy you existed. She was standing in the kitchen, drink in hand, laughing at some story being told. When she caught my eye, she didn't look away immediately like most people do. She held my gaze, smirking slightly, as if daring me to come over. I did. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours straight that night. She had a way of making conversations feel weightless. We jumped from childhood memories to music to travel dreams, and it felt so natural that I almost forgot we were strangers. At one point, she leaned in and whispered, "You're not like other guys I've met. You actually listen." I should have known right then how dangerous that sentence was. After that night, we started texting every day. She was the first person I'd think about when I woke up, and the last one I'd text before falling asleep. A few weeks in, we finally went on our first date. Nothing extravagant, just a late dinner and a walk by the river. But it was there, on that quiet path with the city lights reflecting in the water, that she told me, "You're the best I've ever had." She said it so sincerely that my stomach did this weird mix of flipping and sinking. No one had ever told me something like that. I wasn't even sure if she meant it physically, emotionally, or both. But either way, it hit hard. I didn't know it at the time, but she seemed to understand exactly how to say the kind of thing that would get lodged deep in your head and replay when you were alone. Over the next month, she let me in on little pieces of her life. She told me about her toxic ex, who never valued her, about friends who betrayed her trust, and about how she was done with people who played games. She said I was safe, different, someone she could see herself with. I believed every word. Of course, there were things that didn't quite add up. She would sometimes disappear for hours, even days, without much of an explanation. When she did respond, it was usually a short text like, "Crazy day, we'll call later," followed by another 24 hours of silence. I didn't want to be that guy who pries too much, so I let it slide. One night, I noticed her phone light up while we were watching a movie. The screen was facing me, and I caught a glimpse of a name I didn't recognize, followed by a heart emoji. She picked up the phone so quickly it almost looked like she'd been burnt. "Work," she said, tucking it into her pocket. "Sorry, I'll mute it." I brushed it off, though in the back of my mind it stuck. Then there were the comments. Every so often, she'd say something that felt a little too flirtatious about some guy from her past, but she'd always laugh it off. "He's ancient history," she'd say. "Don't worry. You've got nothing to worry about. You're my person." And because I wanted to believe her, I did. It's funny how love, or even just the idea of it, can make you ignore the alarms blaring in your head. I told myself she was just busy, that she was a little guarded because of her past. But there were moments, fleeting ones, where I felt like I didn't fully know her at all. One weekend, we spent the night at my place. The next morning, she stood in my kitchen wearing one of my t-shirts, sipping coffee and smiling like she belonged there. "You really are the best," she said again, almost like it was a private joke between us now. "You've ruined me for anyone else." At the time, I thought it was the sweetest thing anyone had ever said to me. I didn't realize yet that she was saying similar things to other people, too. The first real crack showed up on a Thursday night. I'd been waiting for Emma to come over, but she texted me an hour before saying she was exhausted from work and just wanted to rest. No big deal, except that later that night, while scrolling through Instagram, I saw her in a friend of a friend's store. She was out at a bar, drink in hand, laughing with a group of people I didn't recognize. At first, I told myself maybe she just got a burst of energy, or maybe it was a work thing. But when I asked her about it the next day, she shrugged it off. "Oh, that was just a quick drink with some friends." I didn't think it was a big deal. Didn't want you to feel like you had to come. The way she said it was so casual, so dismissive, that I felt petty even pressing further. I let it go, but it stuck with me. Over the next couple of weeks, little things started piling up. She'd cancel plans last minute, or be in meetings, but take hours to reply to a simple text. I noticed she had an odd habit of keeping her phone face down on the table when we were together, and she always seemed to be typing to someone the moment she got up to go to the bathroom. One Saturday, we were supposed to meet for brunch. She texted that she was running late, so I sat there, sipping coffee and scrolling my phone. When she finally walked in, she looked stunning, but she also looked flustered. I asked if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "Yeah, just had to take care of something before coming." That night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on my couch. I didn't pick it up. God, I wanted to, but I didn't. But I glanced at the notification. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you again." No name, just a number. I told myself it was probably harmless. I hated myself for giving her the benefit of the doubt, but every time I thought about confronting her, I heard her voice in my head. "You're the best I've ever had. You're my person." It was like an anchor keeping me from drifting into the truth. Then came the night everything tipped over. It was a Sunday morning, and I was sleeping in when my phone started going off like crazy. Dozens of notifications one after another. Half asleep, I picked it up and stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. I had been added to a massive group text. At least 30 people were in it, all different numbers, and the sender was Emma. My chest tightened as I started reading the message. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share the amazing news that Mark and I are officially engaged. Thank you to each of you who's been part of my journey. You've all played a role in shaping the person I am today, and I'm so grateful. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd meant to send it to a family group chat or a circle of close friends. But as I scrolled through the names and numbers, I started recognizing some. A few were guys she'd mentioned in passing. Others, I remembered from her Instagram tags months ago. It hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a random group. This was a list of people she had slept with, including me. The chat started blowing up immediately. Some people sent congratulations. Others sent question marks. One guy replied, "Wait, you're engaged?" My hands were shaking as I sat there in bed, staring at my phone. She was engaged to someone named Mark, and I was just, what? A placeholder? A pastime? I didn't even know how long I sat there before I finally called her. She didn't answer. I called again. No answer. A third time. Voicemail. The worst part wasn't even that she'd been engaged the whole time. It was that she'd put me on the same list as every other guy, like we were just names on her resume. And suddenly, all those best I ever had lines didn't feel like compliments anymore. They felt like marketing copy. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing in my kitchen wearing my t-shirt, sipping coffee, telling me I'd ruined her for anyone else. And then, right after that, I'd see the group chat message pop up again in my mind like a flashing neon sign. Mark and I are officially engaged. By morning, the disbelief had started to fade into a slow, searing anger. I deserved an explanation. No, at this point, I was owed one. I finally got a text from her around 9 a.m. Can we talk later? I'm with family, right? No apology. No, I can explain. Just a casual, almost annoyed response. Like I was the one being unreasonable. I told her I wasn't waiting. She had two options. Meet me in person today, or I'd start forwarding screenshots of her messages to everyone in that group chat. That got her attention. An hour later, she showed up at my apartment. She didn't look apologetic. If anything, she looked inconvenienced. I was going to tell you, she said, as soon as she walked in, like those words were supposed to fix everything. Tell me what exactly? I snapped. That you've been engaged this whole time? That I was just a side project while you were planning a wedding with someone else? That I was part of your, what? Goodbye tour? She rolled her eyes, and I swear in that moment I wanted to laugh at how absurd it was. Don't be dramatic. It's not like that. Oh? Enlighten me then. Emma sat down on my couch and crossed her legs like we were having a casual catch-up. Mark and I have a history. We've been on and off for years. It's complicated. And yes, technically we were seeing each other during the same time I was with you, but you knew I wasn't looking for anything serious. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. You told me I was the best you'd ever had. She smirked, and it was the kind of smirk that stripped all the sentiment out of the memory. You were. That doesn't mean I was going to marry you. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around how someone could say something so callous and mean it. So what was I then? A distraction? A backup plan? You were fun, she said simply, as if that was a kindness. You made me feel good. But Mark is my future. You're not. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't because anything was funny. It was just that my brain had no other way of processing the sheer audacity of what I was hearing. And the group message? What the hell was that? Some twisted trophy wall? That, she said, like she was explaining it to a child, was closure. I wanted to thank the people who were part of my past before I step into my future. Closure? I repeated, my voice cracking. You think blasting a mass text to everyone you've slept with while announcing your engagement is closure? You think I needed that? You think Mark needed that? She hesitated just a fraction of a second at his name, and it told me everything. Mark didn't know. Oh my God, I said slowly, almost to myself. He doesn't know, does he? Emma's lips tightened. It's none of your business what Mark knows. Wrong, I said, standing up. It's absolutely my business when you've been using me for months while promising him forever. And it's definitely his business when the woman he's about to marry is sending out farewell texts to her entire roster, like it's some kind of retirement announcement. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. She just grabbed her bag and stood. You're overreacting. You'll see that eventually. As she walked out of my apartment, I knew two things for certain. One, she wasn't going to feel guilty about any of this. And two, Mark was going to find out, whether she liked it or not. As soon as the door closed behind her, I just stood there in my living room, staring at the spot she'd been sitting. I think I was still in shock at how casually she'd dismissed everything. No remorse. No apology. Just a smug sense of control, like she was certain I'd eventually get over it and let her keep her perfect little narrative intact. But the more I replayed her words, you were fun, you're not my future, the more something inside me hardened. She didn't just lie to me. She treated me like I was disposable, and she thought she'd get away with it. I opened the group chat again. The conversation had slowed down overnight, but there were still people reacting. A few congrats emojis, a couple of confused messages, and one guy flat out asking, wait, weren't we just together 2 weeks ago? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew that if I said what I was about to say, there was no coming back. I'd be burning whatever bridge there might have been. But then again, she'd already set fire to it herself. So I started typing. Since we're all apparently part of the same club, I think you all deserve some context. Emma and I have been seeing each other for the last 4 months. She told me I was the best she'd ever had. She stayed at my place, met my friends, and never once mentioned she was engaged to Mark. Based on some of your names in here, I'm guessing I'm not the only one she left in the dark. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I attached screenshots, her late-night texts, the photos she'd sent, the flirty inside jokes. Nothing explicit, but enough to make it impossible for her to spin a believable excuse. It took less than 5 minutes for the chat to explode. Are you serious? This is disgusting. She told me the same thing about being the best, word for word. Mark needs to see this. And then, a new number appeared in the chat. One I didn't recognize. This is Mark. Who the hell is this and why are you sending me this? For a second, I froze. I hadn't even considered that Mark might actually be in this group. But then I realized, of course he was. She'd sent the mass text to everyone, including her fiancé. I replied, I'm the guy your fiancé has been sleeping with for the past few months. I didn't know about you until yesterday. I think you deserve to know the truth before you marry her. There was a long pause. Then, call me. We spoke for almost an hour. At first, he didn't want to believe me. He said Emma had told him I was just a friend she'd been helping through a breakup. But when I sent him the screenshots, the same ones I'd posted in the group chat, he went quiet. Finally, he said, this isn't the first time. I should have known better. I asked if he was still going to marry her. He didn't answer. He just thanked me and hung up. Over the next day, the group chat turned into a support group for Emma's past partners. People started sharing their own screenshots, stories, and timelines. It became painfully clear that she'd been juggling multiple men for years, sometimes overlapping them so tightly that one guy would drop her off at home an hour before another came to pick her up. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed. A few even admitted they'd known about Mark but assumed she'd leave him eventually. But everyone agreed on one thing. She was a master manipulator. By the following morning, Emma's Instagram had gone dark. No more engagement photos, no ring shots, nothing. Just a single quote post. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself. It was almost laughable. She was already rewriting the story in her head, turning herself into the victim. But this time, too many people knew the truth. By the time a week had passed, the ripple effect had turned into a tidal wave. I hadn't spoken to Emma directly since she walked out of my apartment, but her name kept popping up in places I didn't expect. Mutual friends texting me for details, acquaintances sending me screenshots of her posts, even one of her coworkers sliding into my DMs to say, you're not the first to figure her out, but you might be the loudest. Apparently, word of the group chat had leaked beyond just those 30 or so people. Someone, probably one of the angrier exes, had taken screenshots of the entire conversation and posted them anonymously on a local gossip forum. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. Emma was suddenly the subject of thread after thread, all dissecting her dating history like it was a true crime case. It was surreal watching her perfect image crumble in real time. This was a woman who curated her online presence like a brand. Every post had been carefully staged. The flawless brunches, the vacation shots, the motivational quotes about loyalty and real love. Now, those same quotes were being reposted with sarcastic captions and eye-roll emojis. And then Mark called me again. He sounded different this time, calm, almost detached. I ended it, he said simply. She came over to get her things and she still tried to spin it. Said you were lying, that you were obsessed with her, that you made everything up because she wouldn't commit. But I've been here before. I know the signs. I asked him what he was going to do next. He said, move on. She's not my problem. Then, after a pause, thank you. Not just for telling me, but for forcing me to finally see it. When I hung up, I felt an odd mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd wanted her to face consequences, and she was. But it didn't feel as victorious as I'd imagined. That night, Emma finally broke her silence and texted, you didn't have to ruin my life. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard as a dozen possible replies ran through my head. I could tell her she ruined her own life. I could remind her that actions have consequences. I could send her a screenshot of all the men thanking me for exposing her. Instead, I typed, you ruined it yourself. I just stopped covering for you. Then I blocked her. The next few days were oddly quiet. Without her constant texts, calls, or accidental photos, my phone felt lighter in my... I started sleeping better. I went out with friends without constantly checking my messages. I stopped wondering who she was with when she disappeared for hours. And yet, every now and then, I'd catch myself remembering the little moments, the way she'd laugh at my stupid jokes, the way she'd grab my hand in the middle of a crowd like it was second nature. I hated that part of me still missed her, even knowing everything I knew now. But those memories were always followed by a harsher, the sound of my phone buzzing the group chat opening, and seeing her engagement announcement addressed to every man she'd ever slept. It was the perfect reminder that none of what we'd had was real. It was just a role she played, and I'd been one of many in her rotating cast. A month later, it was like she'd been erased from my life, at least on the surface. Her number was blocked, her social media gone from my feed, and most of the mutual friends we'd had quietly chosen sides. A few stayed in touch, mostly to tell me about the occasional drama flare-up. Someone spotting her at a bar with yet another guy, a rumor about her moving to a different city, whispers that she was telling people she'd escaped a controlling relationship. I didn't bother correcting any of it. I realized pretty quickly that people like Emma don't just rewrite history, they rebuild it from scratch, brick by brick, until even they start to believe their own lies. Fighting that is like trying to hold back the ocean. Still, there were moments I thought about reaching out. Not because I wanted her back, but because some part of me wanted her to admit it. Just once. I wanted to hear her say, "I lied. I used you. I treated you like you didn't matter." I wanted to hear her acknowledge the damage she'd done, but I knew she never would. And maybe that was the real closure, accepting that I'd never get the apology, never get the confession, and that I had to move forward without it. One afternoon, I ran into one of the guys from the group chat at a coffee shop. We'd never met in person, but the recognition was instant. He walked over, shook my hand, and said, "You saved me a lot of time, man." I'd been thinking about proposing to her too. It was like a punch to the gut, but not in the way I expected. Hearing it out loud reminded me just how close I'd come to being marked, or worse, to being married to her before finding out. When I got home that day, I opened my phone, scrolled through my photos, and deleted every single picture of her. The vacations, the dinners, the lazy mornings in bed, all of it. I thought it would hurt, but it didn't. It felt like cleaning out a room you'd been avoiding for years. Dusty, suffocating, and long overdue. The thing is, Emma didn't just cheat on me. She didn't just lie. She made me doubt my own judgment. She made me question whether I was worth honesty, whether I was the kind of person people would choose when it mattered. And the answer, I've realized, is yes. I am. She just wasn't the kind of person capable of choosing me, or anyone really, without betraying them. I used to replay our first meeting over and over, wondering what I could have done different. Now, I only replay the moment I blocked, because that's the real turning point. The moment I stopped letting her live in my head rent-free. She once told me I was the best she'd ever had. At the time, I thought it was the highest compliment. Now, I see it for what it was. A line she used to keep people hooked. I'm not flattered anymore. Because if being the best to someone like her means being part of a long list she'll one day erase without a second thought, then I'd rather be nothing at all. And maybe that's the final thing she gave me without meaning to. The reminder that sometimes, losing someone is the best thing that could ever happen to you.